Hello, and thanks for stopping by today. I'm Amy Sonneman with Paper Mischief. Today I'm excited to share 3 ways to use cardstock to create beautiful rainbow elements for all your paper crafting projects. Let's get started. The trend right now is to do rainbow elements, and rainbow elements can be used on cards, in pocket pages, as well as layouts and so much more. The first thing I'd like to show you is how to use the new LoveCrafts 100-pound bright and beautiful cardstock to create these lovely different backgrounds. So let's jump in and I'll show you how to get started. First, I'd like to show you all of the beautiful rainbow colors that this cardstock is available in. So we have multiple shades of pink, a beautiful red, an orange, a yellow, 2 shades of green, teal, a lighter blue, a nice bright blue, and this beautiful purple. So lots of great colors to choose from when you're making your rainbow. The first thing we're going to do is go ahead and cut a bunch of strips just with a paper cutter so that allows us to have lots of things to work with. So I'm going to grab my paper cutter and some paper, and we're going to start cutting strips to be able to make some beautiful backgrounds. I went ahead and chose my favorite colors in the rainbow assortment. So those are the colors from LoveCrafts that I'm going to start with. And then I'm also going to use the black that is in that collection. It's all 100-pound paper, so it cuts beautifully, it layers beautifully to create some beautiful backgrounds. In each of these colors, we're going to cut some 1/8 inch strips, which is this size, a 1/4 inch strip, which is more like this, and then some 1/2 inch strips. To see what our options are, and we're going to cut a bunch of black 1/8 inch strips to be able to kind of vary things up a little bit. So once you cut an assortment of each of the strips in all of the colors, then we're going to go ahead and get started making some fun backgrounds. One thing that I also wanted to share with you is that there are also dies on the market, if you're a die cutter, that also create the 1/8, 1/4, and 1/2 inch strips. So if you decide not to cut them yourself, there are dies on the market that can do that. Today we're just going to be using the ones that I cut myself. You can easily use dies to do the same thing if you prefer that method. The first thing we're going to do is have a base color that we're going to add our strips to. So I cut my paper 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It's an 8 1/2 by 11 sheet cut into fourths. So you have 4 sheets per 8 1/2 by 11 to work with. Then I'm going to have you get your favorite adhesive, whether you use adhesive like this. We're going to go ahead and add strips of adhesive and cover the whole entire back of the white piece of paper, making sure that you get the edges really well. The first thing we're going to do is do straight lines like this. And we're going to go ahead and use the 1/4 inch strips to be able to make this background. The first design we're going to create is the one that's straight across like this. So I have all of my colors in order that I want to start with to the right. And we're going to take the first color, we're going to lay that down right up against the edge on the bottom. You're going to push that down. And you're just going to go from one to the next, lining them up one on top of the other and making sure they're pressed close to each other so you don't see the white background at all. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Really helps to have them lined up in order, because if you're not careful, it's really easy to get them out of order, and then it's very frustrating because you can't get, once you put this down, it's really hard to get back up. And your rainbow can be any color. It can be pastels, it can be brights, it can be neutrals, whatever works for you. Depends on what project you're working on as well. If you do neutrals, it might be a fun card for Father's Day. That would be fun. And when you're done with the first set of colors, you're going to repeat it until you get all the way to the end. So you're going to start over with the purple and then the blue. And in between each one, you're going to want to rub that down really well to make sure the glue is adhering properly and nothing comes off as you're handling it. The hardest part, I think, is probably cutting the strips and getting them prepared and picking out your colors. I think those were the hardest things for me to decide upon. So it looks like it'll take 2 full rainbows and then an extra purple and an extra blue. When you're finished, you're going to take your bone folder and you're just going to take and rub all of those pieces into place to make sure that the adhesive is nice and pressed down so none of your pieces pop off. On the back, it will look like this. You're just going to take your scissors and trim all of the extras. It's kind of like giving your rainbow a haircut. I like my Tim Holtz scissors because if there's any extra adhesive, these are non-stick, so it's not going to make a mess of your scissors. When you're finished, you have your first background completed. Isn't that beautiful? And this is a pretty easy technique that allows you to do it in any of the sizes, whether it be the 1/8 inch, the 1/4 inch, or even the 1/2 inch. Here's a sample of the 1/2 inch, which gives you less colors in your rainbow, where this gives you a whole lot more. The next piece we're going to do is something that's on an angle, which also has some black strips in between. So we're going to do this one next. I just think that is so elegant and just very bold and bright with a little bit of black accent. So I'm going to show you how to do that one next. This time I'm going to use tissue tape, and I lined the whole piece of paper with tissue tape like this. It's a bit stronger than your tape runner, so I kind of like this a little bit better, but it's also not as forgiving. The tissue tape is super strong and it is very, very sticky. So when you're working with it, once you lay your piece of paper down, it's going to be very hard to get it back up. So just be aware of that as well. This time we're going to create this diagonal stripe that has 1/8 inch separators in black. Off camera, I went ahead and cut a bunch of black 1/8 inch strips to be able to use. So this will be the next piece that we create with our strips. When working on the diagonal, I always want to start in the middle and work out from there. So I'm going to start with my red. And I'm just going to lay that red across the top at an angle. I'm going to take a piece of my black and I'm going to put it right next to the strip of red and press it down. And then we're going to do the same thing we did before. Just go ahead and put one right after the other. Once you rub it down, then you add your black piece and rub that into place. And it's super helpful to have them all lined up already in a row so you can't make a mistake and accidentally grab the wrong one. You can also do this with white, if you want white separators as well. The sky's the limit. If you have a project that is all green and you want to create a fun green background, choose all green strips. It's strictly up to whatever you can imagine. When I cut my black strips, I went ahead and cut them out of the 12 by 12 paper so that I had extra. Because if you notice here, instead of using a long strip, you can just go in, cut some of this excess off and just use it on a smaller section. It just saves on some paper, that's all. It's kind of fun and therapeutic as well. Looks like this little yellow piece is going to be the last one in the corner. So we're going to start back here at the bottom with the red. I'm actually going to flip this around so that my hands are always on the paper and not so close to the adhesive, so I don't get my fingers stuck in the adhesive and make it less sticky. All right, so now that we're to the red, we're going to go backwards. So we're going to go red and then orange. And I just do this while I'm watching television. I cut strips while I was binge watching something the other night on television. And then the next night I was watching the Hallmark Channel and went ahead and did a bunch of samples. It's just kind of fun. Once everything is cut, it's really easy to put everything together. So we're going to go ahead and start over with a light pink. We'll finish it up with a little tiny piece of the rose chintz. So we used some of our extra black here to fill in the smaller areas. When you flip it over, it will look like this. We're just going to go ahead and give it a little haircut. You're going to want to save the larger pieces because you never know when you just need a teeny piece to fill in on the edge. This is a great way to do that. We'll have extra pieces. Then you can actually square it up on your paper trimmer. Isn't that beautiful? So fun. You could easily put a large sentiment on top in black, or in a silver would be beautiful, or in any one of these colors. So pretty. You can also do the same thing that we did with the black. This is the 1/8 inch pieces, and every other one is a white 1/8 inch piece. So you can have the black, or you can put in white pieces like this. So pretty. You can also do a diagonal stripe with the 1/2 inch pieces. I loved this design so much that I decided that I wanted a larger piece. So I took an 8.5 by 11 sheet of white as my base. I used that to create this beautiful 8.5 by 11 sheet in this design so that I could cut different hearts or squares or different parts and pieces out of this to use as elements. And I'm going to keep these to use for cards. They're the perfect size. You cut them down to 4 by 5 1/4, mount them on a fun colored background or a black background. They'd be absolutely stunning. I'm going to give this a little bit of a haircut, and then we're going to go ahead and die cut some shapes out of this so you can see how pretty this die cuts with any of the dies in your collection. I cut my 8.5 by 11 sheet of rainbow paper down to a couple different sizes, and as I was cutting it down, I thought, wouldn't this be fun to use as just a little bit of a border on a card? So save all of your extra pieces because you never know what might spark something fun and unique. I'm going to lay this aside and see what I can come up with later. This sheet would be beautiful to do the new slimline cards that are so popular right now. Isn't that a beautiful rainbow? Going at a diagonal stripe this way. So fun. I'm going to cut a heart out of this piece, and I centered it left to right and top to bottom, and I adhered it with a piece of tape that is repositionable so it won't tear my paper. I'm going to go ahead and run that through my die cutting machine and create a heart out of the middle of this. And when we're done, we'll have two separate pieces that we can use as elements in our paper crafting. Let me show you what that will look like. Here's what the pieces look like once they've been cut out of the rainbow paper. And it still doesn't look like much, but with a little bit of effort, say we add a matching scalloped heart behind this. Look how beautiful that looks. Or maybe we should add a piece of white paper behind this and make this a shaker card. So little things you can do to go from a beautiful heart to an awesome heart or a shaker card. So for one piece you get two cards or two elements to work with. So definitely look through your die cutting stash to see what might be something fun that you can maybe layer, use as a frame. Some people think that this is a little too bright for them, but if you add just a little piece of vellum over the top, look at how that transforms that bright, bold background into something more subtle. Add, say, a die cut word to create a beautiful card. Once you get your pieces cut and layered and you have your rainbows made, there are so many options to be able to create beautiful elements. You could create this and put it into a pocket page. You could add it on a layout. If you did this in a 12 by 12 sheet, you could easily cut pieces for a 12 by 12 layout. You can make cards, you can add them to your traveler's notebooks. There's lots of different ways you can use the rainbow paper to be able to make beautiful elements for all of your paper crafting projects. The other thing I'd like you to consider is looking at your punches in your collection. I had a punch that is actually a postage stamp punch. I also have postage stamp dies. And I thought, wouldn't that be fun as a postage stamp? So I went ahead and I punched some stamps in black like this. And then I just trimmed down this 1/8 inch stripe rainbow background to fit perfectly on top of the actual stamped image. If you want it to be a little more subtle, you could add a little piece of vellum over the top. You could put another image stamped on top. So many different things that you could do to make these beautiful elements on your paper crafting projects. I hope that's given you lots of ideas for how to use the rainbow striped paper that we made earlier. The last thing I want to show you is how to create an inlaid die cutting rainbow. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to take this die cut and we're going to cut it first out of black and then out of each of these individual colors. And then we'll have lots of pieces to create fun embellishments for your projects. Let's take a look at that next. Off camera, I went ahead and cut an assortment of pieces like this in each of the colors that I want for my hexagon. This set is called the Hex Color Wheel from the Stamp Market. When you pop out all of the triangles, you get this black hexagon. Before I die cut it, I put tissue tape on the back so I can just go ahead and pull off the adhesive. You need something to kind of keep it stable and glue it down to. So I'm just going to take a white piece of paper. Normally I would probably use a black piece so that the white doesn't show, but I want to be able to show you real clearly how this goes together. I have all of my pieces that have the tissue tape on the back. You can use your tape runner, whatever you have on hand. You're just going to take them one by one and fit them into each of the triangles in rainbow order. I'm going to show you on the large size, but it's the same way on this smaller hex color wheel as well, right here. So this is what you call inlay die cutting. So you're die cutting the outside and then you're replacing the inside with other colors. Now, if you had something that you wanted to, say, scrapbook, and it was a particular color, you could easily do it in all shades of pink, or shades of green, or shades of blue. That would be super easy to do, depending on what you needed it for. When you're done gluing them in place, it will look like this. And then when I'm done, I go ahead and just take my scissors because I want elements that I can use like this. I can cut them apart and use parts and pieces on layouts. I can use them on cards or in traveler's notebooks. So I want just the pieces by themselves. So I'm just going to take and cut that backing off. Now, if I had done it in black, I wouldn't have to be quite so careful. Because I did it in white, I don't want that white to show. But that's going to be your background and kind of your base for your hex. And then you'll have lots of parts and pieces to be able to use on any of your projects. When you're finished doing your inlay die cutting, you'll have a beautiful hexagon in a rainbow of colors. Perfect for adding to layouts as well as journals, traveler's notebooks, cards, and so much more. At the end of your rainbow adventure, you're going to have a ton of extra pieces. 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, as well as 1/2 inch strips in rainbow colors. Before you just swipe them all away into the trash can, lay them all out on a piece of scrap paper for a later use. I think this would be beautiful to create a slimline card. I would think this would be great to cut out a long, thin word, as well as maybe a frame, and so much more. I mean, the possibilities are endless. I hope that you have learned a few tips, tricks, and techniques to use your cardstock in many different ways to create beautiful rainbow elements in all of your paper crafting projects. If you like this video, be sure to like, share, and leave a message. Thanks for watching.